Hey, welcome to part 12 of the series. You can see I'm fully protected up here. I've got my orbital saw hooked up as well with the correct blade installed. Another thing to note, when you go to buy these blades in bulk, make sure you get the one that fits your oscillating tool if you're using the generic ones. Yeah, at the beginning I bought the wrong style blades. Anyway, I got the right ones now. So what we're gonna do to kick things off is we're gonna start at the bottom. Now, let me show you the trick here when you're using your orbital saw. As you see, I have some items here. I got this bulk piece here, and it's kind of in the way. And what I mean by that is, when you go to cut into this transom, you want to kind of cut perpendicular to this surface. You don't want to cut down. You could cut this way, but that's not going to be any use for you. But what you want to do is try to cut as flush as you can. So as you notice, I got the blade. I'm going to hold it like that, and I'm going to go just enough to get through this surface. Should be no more than about 1/8 of an inch. Once you go through it, what you're going to do is stop around the corners, right? Pull it out, go like this, hit it again. Try not to go in this part of the boat, because this is solid fiberglass. You don't want to go through that. If you do happen to go through it, which I have before, it's not a big deal. We can fix it. I'll show you how. But you're going to want to pull out, hit this side, right? And you're going to keep working your way until you either run into something that's blocking you, and then we'll work our way up this way. But there's no, this is 2 inches thick, so we don't need to worry about going through the outer part of the shell. Our goal here is to just kind of make it through the 1/8 inch inner part of the shell. All right, and we're going to do that throughout. So go ahead and put your gear on, and we'll get started here. Okay, everybody. So I'm now talking through a gas mask, if you're wondering why my voice sounds a little bit different. I did try to take it off for a second to see if it was a pretty pungent smell out there, and yeah, it is pretty nasty. So anyway, here's what we got. It actually went through just enough. And if you got these type of blades here, it actually kind of has somewhat of a little bitty depth finder on it, I guess, if you would. And that's how far I've cut. Just like I said, made it through there, and then all the way across, and I stopped right here. I think what I may end up doing is completely pulling this thing off. See ya? And then working on cutting this thing out, because they're definitely not using this anymore, and neither will I. So I'll probably take this little guy and then cut it off right here. Well, trust me, you didn't want to hear that on the camera. It would have been way too loud. All right, look at that. Some old water, I guess, stuck in there from who knows how long. All right, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. This is for bimetal, so I'm just going to kind of work this all the way across until we shear it off. All right, so you can kind of see how I took this orbital sander, or orbital saw here, oscillating saw, I got it eventually, and I just sliced it across. And then I took the oscillating tool here, and I slid it under this, kind of did the corner and worked my way. And that's what I'm going to do on this side. I'll turn it and kind of work my way all the way up here. And instead of going underneath the floorboard, what I'll probably do is try to make a straight line and go straight up this way. So same thing on your side. Go ahead and follow the curvature, right? And then when you get a flat surface, just go straight up. All right, so that's going to be your next step. Okay, so you can see making these straight cuts as we're going around the corners. Like that corner is kind of hard to cut, so I just do a triangle. You'll see afterwards we fix all of it. That's where that grinder comes in, and I'll tell you what, that's going to be some fun times. I think this is messy. Wait until you get that grinder going. All right, like I said, made a 90 here. All right, and we'll keep working to that corner, and then I'm going to go straight up and terminate right up there. Same thing on this side. We're going to work to that corner, and then we're going to go straight up. And believe it or not, on the top up here, there is no connection for the fiberglass, so that's kind of interesting. They kind of brought the fiberglass up too high anyway to be able to roll it and bind it against the back. So probably when I do my design here, I'll take that into account, and I'll actually make it where it rolls. Because see, you can see here, this is where the top of the transom mount is. So really, if you terminate here and you have enough to roll your reinforcement material over, it's just as good. So having this extra material up here doesn't necessarily mean that's the right way to do it. So we'll see. We'll definitely check that out. And just for reference purposes too, if you're interested, you notice it's right at 24 inches from the bottom of your boat to the top of that mount. Okay guys and girls, I've actually cut that line all the way across and up to there. And believe it or not, I did all that with one blade, one bimetal blade. And surprisingly, it's still good. I mean, there's still teeth on it. That's a first for me. When I first cut the transom out of another boat on my prior video, yeah, I went through these blades like very, very often. So I'm starting to think that this fiberglass is super thin. So anyway, we've got it cut off all the way across. Now what we're going to start doing is we're going to try to peel it back off of the presumable rotten inner wood there, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. Alright, so what I did was I used my orbital saw here, and I cut a little square out. You can see already the wood is still very wet in here. Super wet. Alright. Anyway, what you can do now is you can see how there's flex in there. You can use that bit of flex to start working the rest of it off. Alright. So take some time. You're gonna need to be patient. And you'll see, like I'm doing here, it will slowly but surely unzip itself. Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. Be very careful as you handle up here, because that will go through your rubber gloves. Anytime you have that fiberglass like that, be very careful when you're moving it. Yeah. Just like I said, be very careful when you're removing this, because these shards of fiberglass will go right through your glove. So just be very careful. What I'm going to do, just so I don't cause any issues like I just mentioned, is I'm going to take my orbital saw and cut that right there. Okay. Easy enough. So this is all the way in the far corner. Check it out. I mean, this used to be plywood. I mean, this is kind of fun. Really weird. I hope this is not full of mold. Anyway, I'm going to stop doing that. Yeah, pretty bad, huh? I'll just set that out there. You notice ahead of time I didn't really clean too much in here because this wood and the shells of all this fiberglass are going to kind of get everywhere. So you can see in here, pretty nasty. All right, another piece out in the back here. All right, I'm going to slice now with the orbital all straight up. And even though I made that predefined cut, it still didn't go where I wanted it to. It's okay. This is going to be the most solid part anyway. You can see in here. We'll probably leave that alone. But this is, I'm not even sure what that is. Kind of weird. Weird. Yeah, but this is all wood. All right. Let's get some of this cleaned up here. Okay. Like I said, you gotta be very careful around that plywood, or the plywood and fiberglass. Okay. Get this corner here. Maybe if we're lucky. Yeah. Held on pretty tight. I try to preserve, if I can, this area, because it shows you when you go to put in your new transom, having these cutouts like this, it's nice to have a little template made out of fiberglass still intact from your old boat. This way, all things considered, you know you've got the right dimensions. Because if you cut this too thin, and we'll talk about this more, if you don't cut this, you'll have limited steering. That could happen. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to cut this out with the orbital so I can save this piece as a template. Okay. You can see how I made a little cutout. Just an easy little trick. I mean, you don't have to. It may save you some time once everything's said and done. Let's see if I can make it where it doesn't. Alright, work my way over here. Alright, slowly but surely we'll get this thing off here. Okay. A little bit of work. Managed to save that little template. Alright, so let's continue disassembling this transom. There are some parts in here that are still pretty well connected. We've got a lot of parts that are not. Look at this. Look at how rotted this thing is. This is pretty bad. Weird. But to be expected, I guess. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and slice across here now. Okay. And obviously the drain is going to be a little bit of a conundrum, but we'll see what we got. Not too bad. You can see the best part of the transom is up top. And progressively it got worse as we get Goes through the bottom. Alright, so I'll make a few cuts here and then straight up this way to unzip the rest of it. Okay, let's try in here now. That one is on there pretty tight. But over here. Yeah. There it goes. Just enough to get your fingers under there. Look at that. Easy. I'm not sure how this is going to work down here, but we'll give it a try. Okay. A little bit of work, persistence, able to get that out. And I'm not going to lie, that was quite the pain. Quite the pain. Anyway, let's continue over on this side here and start unzipping this side. Get that removed. Okay, you got that piece out. Got some writing in here. Can't really make anything out about what it says, but I'd say it's probably not marine grade. Easiest way to tell is marine grade should not have any knots in it. And there's clearly a knot right there. So more likely this is just your run-of-the-mill, maybe exterior grade plywood. That's what I would say. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and continue. We only got a little bit left. And then we'll talk about how we plan on getting the actual remnants of this transom out. It'll be fun. Stay tuned. You can see the status of the wood in certain spots. Very, very wet. That side, this whole corner is probably the worst. Pretty bad down there. The best would probably be this corner. It's kind of weird how that is. One of the things to note is this is the outer shell of the boat, maybe 1/8 of an inch. And they took what looks like 2 sheets of plywood, and the way they bonded them together appears to be they glassed them together, because you had probably the first 1 inch of wood, which was, it had the outer fiberglass on it, and then as I started pulling that rotten wood out, it exposed another layer of fiberglass. So it didn't really matter, you know, that methodology I think is really just a waste of fiberglass, because what ends up happening is the water ends up getting in between here, which is your weak point. And once it gets in here, it doesn't matter what type of layers of fiberglass you have, because it's all compromised. So this part of the boat is probably the most important piece to seal up. And you'll see when I redo the transom, I don't use fiberglass to bond them together. I use a marine grade adhesive. Probably cheaper, more than likely. I'd imagine it'd be cheaper. So I'm going to go ahead and finish removing all the remnants of old wood that I can with just a flat-headed screwdriver and the oscillating tool. Once we get to a point where we start having issues removing the different layers, like probably up here, we're going to switch tools and I'll show you what we do there. Okay, so as we're concluding this part of the series, and I will continue to remove the remnants of the rotten transom. You can see here the 2 layers that were sandwiched. You had the layer that was here, and then the layer underneath, which was also rotten. And then here's the outer shell of the boat. Now, the trick is to get a good amount, right, exposed. And then what you're going to do is take your oscillating saw and run it perpendicular like this. And you'll move it in various different directions, and what you're going to do is you're going to get underneath, right, underneath the wood. Be very careful you don't go that way and punch through the outer shell. If you do, we can fix it. I'll show you how. But what you'll do is leave that flat against the outer shell, and that's what you're going to do. It's going to take me a good amount of time to do that throughout here, but you can see this is where I started. That's going to be it for this episode. I'll keep working, and hopefully on our next episode you'll get to see what it looks like where it's just the outer shell exposed. As always, be safe when you're doing this. Make sure you got your protective gear. If you're wondering again why my voice sounds different as I'm talking through the mask. If you like the video, subscribe. Leave some comments if you got questions. Until next time, have a good one.